Okay, we're going to talk about today one of my favorite topics. Why? Because, let me tell you why. You see, I'm at the beach, right? I wasn't always at the beach. I'm at the beach now in my mind, and that's a mindset because I came across a wonderful book called The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, and I have wonderfully adopted this into my life. So I'd like to share it with all of you.
Can you spell that word? The what theory?
The Let Them,
Oh, let them.
Letthem,
Okay.
let
All right.
them. Hmm.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, you're going to hear this much in the next um, coming minutes. And Mel Robbins, she's a great public speaker, and she came to this book because, from her own personal experience because she found herself very, very, very unhappy in her life, and
Imagine
that
that.
she imagined that. Go figure. And let me just say, there's more that connects us in this human experience than separates us. And as a human, the thing that we signed up for was the challenge of figuring things out in this life that are true of us spiritually, that we are all more capable than we can ever imagine. We just have to learn how to get out of our own way and unlearn a whole lot of crap that eclipses us from our truth. Okay. And that's why I love this book so much because it really does encourage us all to honor ourselves a bit more. And how many of us spend so much of our time, our day, our energy, our focus on showing up for everybody else? Well, let me just ask the question. How are we supposed to be happy if we do that all day, every day? It really is the express way to unhappiness. And I'm not proposing at all for us to be heartless people. It's not that at all. But when we begin to honor ourselves more and fill our cups up more, then we can become happier people every day. Life's a beach in our head, and show up for those who mean the most to us in a more substantial way. And isn't that a good thing? Can't we all benefit from that? So let's talk about it. So the let them theory, Mel talked about how one day she just came across, there was a lot of different experiences that she talked about, but she talked about how she had come across on Facebook a bunch of her friends had gone off on this trip, and she was not invited. And she felt a bit in her feelings because she didn't know anything about this. But after she spent some time in her feelings, how could they not invite me? How, all the things that show up as far as that's concerned and getting in your feelings. As after she sat and thought about it for a while, she had realized that if she was being honest with herself, she had not been reaching out to her friends as much as she had, that she really had not made the effort with them. So it was probably less of them icing her out. It was just the natural progression of her not being in the mix as much, right? So she had to that began for her journey to take a little bit of an introspective look in within herself. And she came up with I guess, some good tools to live by that changed her life. And she shared it with all of us. Number one, Number one is the let them theory involves stop trying to control other people. Now, in that situation, right, that she was mad because how dare they not invite me and blah, 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 right? Well, the more that we are become attached to other people's actions, what they do, we become the most unhappy version of ourselves. But if we learn how to detach and to just let people do what they're going to do, we become happier beings. Why is that? Because one of the biggest sources of stress in our life is trying to manage what other people think, say, and do. Is that a realistic goal? Can we do
Not
that?
for happiness.
No, no, right? So we need to let people disagree with us as a part of that detachment. We need to allow them to make their own choices and allow people to just behave how they want. Just let people be on their side of the street and don't be concerned so much about what they're doing on their side of the street. People will ultimately act accordingly to their own values and priorities. And that's in accordance to what their life path is and their journey is. Trying to force them to change only creates frustration and conflict within ourselves and others. And the result of you detaching from this, trying to control what other people do, is you free yourself from unnecessary emotional stress. Now, as far as your own happiness, is that going to help? Absolutely, it's going to help. Here's the thing though, I'm a spiritual girl. And the way that I have begun to be more at the beach in my head and a way to understand how to detach, because actually doing these things and saying it and doing it are kind of two different things, right? You would agree? Because we may
Absolutely.
have an awareness of something, but our emotional knee-jerk responses, especially us as hypnotherapists, right? We emote and respond emotionally from 2, 5, 8, 10, 11-year-olds. Easier said than done. But when you look at it from a higher perspective and awareness of that, of everybody's here on their own journeys, everybody is here in this human experience to have the experiences to ascend your soul and grow spiritually. Everybody's at different vantage points in that growth process. So we're never going to have somebody understand our position because they haven't walked in our shoes. People are going to look at things from a far different perspective than we do. Let them let them be where they are. Have grace and compassion for people where they are. Truth also is that most people do not do hurtful things with the hurtful intention. Most people are just responding from their own perspective and their own internal narrative, just as we are. Other people are not responsible for how we feel either. Just like you are not responsible for how someone else feels. That too comes from an internal narrative. So the more that you can free yourself and give people space to be and do what they will, knowing that they're not coming from an evil or manipulative or hard-hearted space. Most people are just trying to navigate this life experience that's tough. It's the grad school of spiritual ascension, the earth experience. This is not easy stuff. Don't judge another person. They're just trying to make it through like we are. But they're coming from their own experience, which is wholly different than ours. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Give grace where grace is given, because what is that in the core transformation and in hypnotherapy for the age regression? The forgiveness, understanding, acceptance, what is it? Compassion and love that we all want. We say in that process, haven't we too hurt someone and didn't necessarily intend to? So no one else is inherently deserving of judgment. Remember that, Melissa? Fucall. I won't say what it sounds like, how I taught you guys how to remember that.
We're going to remember it that way for forever.
Exactly. So hopefully when we look at things from a spiritual perspective, it helps us to incorporate it and help us to respond from a different and better place, right? And when you have compassion for people, you're less likely to judge, and no one deserves judgment because we're all just learning as we go. Number two, because there's 7 of these concepts that I want to leave with you guys or share with you guys today. Pair the let them theory, let them be and do what they're going to do, with and then let me. We don't have control over what other people do. All we have true control over is our own response to what the said thing is that the person does. So let them and release control that you may feel like you need to have over others, because it's a futile effort. And then let me take responsibility for our own response or for your response. Let me take responsibility, because that's an energetic exchange, right? But I certainly can take responsibility for my response. I can choose to get angry and flame out, or which is choosing suffering. or I can choose to let them understand they're doing it for their own reasons. And even if it's unevolved, you know, they don't deserve judgment. They're on their journey, right? Boundaries are a good thing in this number 2 point. When people, I always say it's a beautiful thing to see people through the eyes of God. But when they can't see it, sometimes you have to take yourself out of the crosshairs. Remove your energy when they can't do better. Create healthy boundaries is an expression of self-love. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
How many conversations have I had with Catherine? What about those boundaries, Kelly? When I'm belly aching her about something. Boundaries much?
I did. The spiritual leader at our spiritual center this morning was talking about similar situations, and she said her response is just, "I'll pass."
Mm-hmm.
You want to act like that? Pass.
Yeah, remember, no is a complete sentence. You know, you don't have to be nasty about it, but or the phrase that I have taken on, adopted, that has been a game changer. No, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. People have nowhere to go with that. And it's not rude, it's not nasty, it's just you're just declaring what you are willing or not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So let people cancel plans. Let them decide whether or not they want to continue, and let them cancel plans. Let you continue. Let me continue to decide whether or not I want to continue investing in said relationship. You have the control over your response. And that's a choice, that's a decision. And when you're deciding to go down the lack side of the equation, because there's always two sides, you are choosing suffering. You have the choice. Okay? This shifts your focus from reacting to others to acting intentionally for your own well-being. Thoughts on that so far?
Well, I'm just thinking of years ago when I used to go dancing a couple nights a week. Initially, a couple of women friends would make plans and they'd say, yeah, they wanted to go with me. And day of, suddenly at the last hour before we're going, they back out for one reason or another. And instead of staying home, I decided, you know what, I could go dancing by myself. I couldn't depend on them anyway. So I just went off and had fun alone. I mean, I
There you
had
go.
partners.
That's
Yeah.
right. So you still did what you wanted to do and you still had fun.
I did have
And
fun.
it wasn't contingent upon somebody else's decisions.
No, and I never asked them to go with me again because clearly they couldn't follow through. The one
Right.
friend said, former friend said, if a man called and asked her out on a date that conflicted with plans she had with a female friend,
Mm-hmm.
she'd bail with that
Yeah.
female friend. And I said, yeah, no, no, no.
And let me just say too that we place how we experience things, going back to this point, is based upon our own internal narrative. We place focus and weight and power upon what we focus upon. That's our choice. Okay. For example, this is a great example. Now, back in the days when you were dating, if you had a date set up with someone who you really didn't feel that much chemistry for, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do this, right? Versus, and they stood you up, versus somebody who you were really looking forward to spending that time with, and they stand you up. Now, the two actions are equal, are they not?
Mm-hmm.
But the power or the attention, the focus that you place on it gives it the weight.
Right.
We all experience things, emotions from our internal narrative.
Yep.
Okay.
It's true. It's true.
So, number 3 is accept people for who they really are. A powerful insight in this book is how people fall in love with others and their potential rather than who they actually are. The let them theory means let them show you who they are and believe what their actions reveal, not words. And I'm going to add to this too, because I'm a spiritual girl. We all have the capacity to read the energy of situations. I don't believe what people say. I read the energy of what they're saying, and it tells me everything I need to know. Have you guys ever had that situation where you could read the energy? The words and the energy were opposite ends of the spectrum?
Of course.
Yeah. You're going to lead healthier relationships when you are honoring that of what you can read deeper than the surface level energy. And stop trying to reshape people into your expectation. It's freedom, it's peace. Number 4 is to focus on what you can control. You know, there's a philosophy that encourages distinction between what you can not control, others, behaviors, opinions, emotions, and what you can control, your actions, your boundaries, your mindset, which is what we just basically said, right? And once we stop obsessing over the uncontrollable things, we reclaim our energy and our personal power in doing that. It's a beautiful feeling. Number 5 is to reduce anxiety by releasing expectation. Many emotional triggers come from expectation, such like they should have invited me. They should have behaved differently. They should have understood me. Well, again, being a spiritual girl, people and how they show up in our life is a direct mirror of our own energy, without exception. So when people are showing up, not inviting you, not feeling like you're not understanding you, it's because in some way you are not giving that energy to yourself. It's a mere reflection because we're all eternal energy. So when these challenging situations come up, take the opportunity, let me do the internal reflection that my energy is kind of funky in this minute. And the universe is giving me the gift of reflecting that back to me. Let me clear up this static energy, right? Number 6, let people fall and learn. Kind of went to what Melissa was saying with the savior complex, right? It's funny how the universe has organically organized these podcasts that are dovetailing in with one another. It's not coincidence, it's alignment. Sometimes trying to rescue or fix people actually prevents their growth. The let them theory means allowing people to just make mistakes. Because we all come here. That's how we learn. To face consequences, personal responsibility. That's how you learn and grow. And to grow from their experiences. How many of us as parents tried to put our kids in a bubble? Didn't want them to fail.
I didn't do that.
Well, many people do.
Ask
You're
my
an
kids.
involved parent.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not a parent, so I can't answer the comment for that.
Well, wherever, put it where it applies, our spouses, our friends, but we need to normalize and embrace failing forward. We all would move through these cycles of growth more easily. There's no downside to failing because you learn every time. And in doing this, you're freeing yourself as well as creating healthier boundaries and more mature relationships.
One of the things I learned over the years is if you solve somebody else's problem for them, you get the growth that comes with that, and you rob them of their own growth.
They stay stuck in their cycles. Nobody
Well, that's
wins.
like the old story too about you can teach somebody to fish. You can feed them a fish every day, or you can teach them how to fish so they can do it themselves, right?
Exactly.
And if you're feeding them every day and then you're not feeling good that day, they're screwed.
That's right. You know, my children for a while during the course of my divorce were trying to emotionally blackmail me. And I was petrified because of their fear tactics. And we stayed in this loop, and then finally I said, enough. I surround you two with love and light. I give because I'm going to be crazy. And at the end of the day, you guys are going to be okay. So, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I want you to know that's when they really started thriving. They really did. So, this is really a true, nobody wins when everybody stays in the same cycle. So it really is a waste of energy. Number 7 is protect your energy and inner peace. Ultimately, this theory is about preserving your emotional energy, something that Melissa was talking about before in her podcast. When you stop trying to manage everyone else, you experience less mental exhaustion, you reclaim your energy, you become more adaptable, happier too, and you focus on building your own life and happiness, which is what we came here to do anyway. We came here to sort ourselves out. Everyone else is a mirror to that end of where we are in that journey to that end. That's it. That's it. So a lot of these require an unlearning from how we've normally responded because we're so accustomed to being nice, taking care of everybody else, be it from a social point of view or a safety point of view from our early childhood experience, which we can all relate to as healers, right? So let's toss it back out to you guys. Patrick, you had not heard of this before, so I'm curious to get your feedback on what your takeaways are from this.
Well, actually, one of my first takeaways is that um, once you spelled it out for me and I could hear it better because as I said, I have hearing issues. I realized I did see that book in the bookstore the other day, and I didn't know anything about it. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's another one of those pop psychology things, and I just went by it. But after hearing you talk about it, I've got two people in my mind that I think, okay, I'm going to tell this person, I'm going to tell that person, I'm going to probably buy a copy myself. Um, because, I think those things are in some ways fundamental, but not obvious,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
right? At least not obvious in most people's normal conception of how we deal with stuff. And but they're fundamental to if you want to have some peace, if you want to have your autonomy, if you want to have the ability to move forward and be as functional as you can for yourself and everybody that you interact with, then
Mhm.
yeah.
And from a bigger picture, even when we are doing this for ourselves, we are becoming happier, more peaceful people. And what is the net effect of that in our world and humanity? It's no small thing. It's the gift that keeps giving. And I have, for the past, ever since I heard about this book, I've told so many people about it. And everybody comes back to me saying how it has shifted their life in some significant way. And a girlfriend of mine, that's a real estate colleague of mine, I was out and about yesterday and I had mentioned the book to her. And I asked her, she was doing an open house yesterday. And she says, no, I'm home. I was just showed something earlier. Come on by. And so I did. And what was she doing? She was sitting in her courtroom, in her courtyard when I walked up, and she was reading the Let Them Theory. It's a great book. It is simple, but it is a game changer for sure. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, that information really helped me get through a really tough spot with one of my family members. And in particular, there's one chapter about how to deal with difficult family members. And so before I did anything, I finished that chapter and
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, okay, I feel better equipped to
Mm-hmm.
know how to respond to the situation. It was really helpful.
Yeah. It's a great book. And it's also an audio version. I listen to it in audio version because as I'm taking my shower, putting on my makeup in the morning, I often will listen to that and other books. But that's how I read through that book. And I think I've probably read it 3 different times now in that way. In my car, putting on makeup, whatever, just because it's just you pick up more things as you read it more and more. little jewels along the way, So I highly suggest anybody who's read it once, read it a second and third time, listen to it, get the audio version because it's very helpful in that way. You can just get these little golden nuggets as you go throughout your day. What do you think about it, Catherine?
Well, it resonates with me. It's certainly some of what she's talking about are things I've done. Honestly, I credit my 7 years of Al-Anon with helping me with boundaries, having healthier boundaries. And I did that full 7 years before I became a hypnotherapist. So it set some groundwork. I had a client one time say to me, well, you must be exhausted at the end of the day listening to all of our problems. And I said, oh, I don't take your problems home with me. They're yours. And I said, we're going to resolve them. The work you're doing is going to get you to a different place with that. But I said, no, I don't take them with me. She was quite surprised, but I would have been burned out years ago had I not known how to have boundaries.
There's no way. I mean, when you do this work for long enough, you hear the worst things that people do to each other and that they've experienced, and there's no way you could hold on to that and continue going.
No.
I can also say too that it really can be instrumental in transforming your relationships for the positive. You being able to take your personal power back, especially in love relationships. Because a lot of times, we might have some fear basis, some fears of relationship in our relationships. And, when we're focused on that kind of stuff, then that's how we create them, as the mirror is going to show up what we fear. Wouldn't you agree with that? What you fear, you manifest, and fear is not real. It's only the power you give to it within your mind. Well, I know a lot of people, you guys are not in this situation, but a lot of people, as far as manifestation, because this is a great instrument for manifestation. Because why? You're mastering your emotions better. And we create from our emotions that dictate our vibrations, and our vibration is what we manifest from. So it's very important. And so when you are using this as a tool to reclaim your power in any kind of relationship, but especially love relationships, because they typically, that and money are the hardest things to manifest in life. It's a game changer. When you are taking your power back and you are standing more grounded in your truth and knowing that you have control over your responses, that just letting people do what they're going to do, that's how you teach them how to treat you, which is important, which is so important. Because people walk around thinking that they don't have control a lot of times in various types of relationships because we don't have control over what other people do. But you do. It's energetic. So when you acknowledge too, and that's why I take things from a spiritual point of view, that when people are showing up in your life and it's reflecting your work, you can stand more in your power to do your work, which is going to transform these relationships in positive ways. Does that make sense?
Does.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of one time I had a client that it was during the brief period where I started filming demos outside of the school when I was teaching at the hypnotherapy school. And the rule that I made for myself was, because if you were going to do a demo, everybody knew we're doing this demo for this XYZ technique. And everybody knew that up front. So the rule I made was people would come for a session and I wouldn't get to know what it was going to be until they sat down. And then I would make a choice of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And this is why I'm going to do it. And then do the session. And so I had this woman that I knew, and her issue was her adult daughter would treat her like she's the child. And the daughter is always telling her, Mom, you need to do this. And Mom, you need to do that. Well, I knew the woman well enough to know it's not that this woman is, not capable of running her life. And it's not that she's clueless or whatever. So it was clearly not really anything wrong with Mom. It was but she was dealing with being treated this way by her daughter. And I don't remember what we did, but the telling thing was a month later when I ran into her somewhere, I asked her, I said, so how's that going? So when your daughter does that, how do you feel now? And she looked at me and she goes, Patrick, since we did that session, she doesn't treat me that way anymore.
Funny about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No.
Funny about that. How'd that leave you to feel?
How did that leave me to feel?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it felt great to me. I mean, but it's a good thing. It's like that old saying about, it only takes one person to transform a relationship.